Seltzer's considered the gold standard, except she was demoted to the silver standard, I believe, for one of the caucuses that she did not participate in. Even if her poll is wrong, right? Like, she has a pretty solid track record. She has a incredibly strong track record of being off by like basically 1 point. You know what I mean? That's the thing. If you look at like her last Iowa poll versus results here, I mean, this is a good example. 2022 Senate, R plus 12, R plus 12. 2020 president, R plus 7. Turns out it was R plus 8. 2027, R plus 4. Turns out it was R plus 7. 2018 governor, D plus 2. It's R plus 3. 2016 president, R plus 7, R plus 9. 2014 Senate, R plus 7, R plus 8. 2012 president, D plus 5, D plus 6. So governor is always going to be different. The gubernatorial race is unique, but beyond that, I mean, this is as reliable as you can be. You know what I mean? You don't get more reliable than that in terms of polling. And also, yeah, the average Iowan voter just seemingly loves when the Democrats don't have a cracker ass president. You know what I mean? Iowans are basically like, give me a black Democrat. I don't want no white boy. Okay. What the is this? Which is funny because it's like 98% white. They do. This is 2 for 2. Okay. That's where I disagree with you. Ours should be, by all accounts, absolutely crushing Dems, massive inflation, economic unrest, globally incumbent parties trash because of economic stuff, border unrest. No, this is not a normal raise. What are you talking about? Yeah, if Nikki Haley was running right now, it would be Jover. The f do you mean? This is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is maxed out on his base of support and has a very limited avenue to pick up new people. Okay. He was the president. He won once. He was the president for 4 years and then he lost. It's over at that point. People have made up their minds about him. I think that's crazy to say Kamala winning is a wild upset. That's insane. If it wasn't Donald Trump, you are 100% right, but it's not someone else. It's Donald Trump. So if you're going up against Donald Trump, a person who already lost an election, okay, yeah, it's pretty nutty that it's like this close. I mean, look, this could have been better for Donald Trump even against Kamala Harris, but Donald Trump is still Donald Trump. And he keeps reminding everybody how he is Donald Trump. And this is what I said about the Iowa poll, right? The Des Moines Selzer poll. I said, look, you got Roe v. Wade, massively consequential. You got January 6th, okay? Which isn't necessarily like threat to democracy or whatever, because like pollsters show that's not the top priority at all. But it actually spells that he's like a sore loser and really narcissistic, which reminds everybody what they don't like about Donald Trump, okay? That's important. That is absolutely important. You got JD Vance, massively consequential pick, massively awful pick for Donald Trump. That's a base pick. You already had the base. Good luck on that. You have tens of millions of dollars wasted on anti-trans ads. Shows that their priorities are in the wrong direction. Shows that they think that these are the top priorities. It's like, you're stupid. Just talk about the economy, jackass. Talk about the economy. Talk about how you're anti-war, but you won't do that because you're Donald Trump. Then you have anti-immigrant screeds instead of messaging discipline on economy. Dog tariff plan, which was effectively countered as a mass sales tax, which I really liked. Kamala Harris's campaign has had a couple big W's. That was one of them. Okay. On the communication front, that was a very effective way of deflating the whole tariff thing because it was objectively a stupid economic policy anyway. Threatening to use the military on enemy from within, and these are the results. Every normie lib I know thinks the anti-trans ads are effective. I don't know why. Just stop talking to liberals, please. Okay. The reason why normie liberals think it's effective is the exact same reason why they think Kamala Harris is brilliant for tacking to the right. Because they're 1, stupid, 2, terrified of Republicans, and 3, they kind of like Republicans at the same time. Okay? That's why everything liberals advocate for, everything liberals talk about comes from a place of fear. Okay? Yeah, here it is. Selzer poll has Trump with just 28% of senior women and losing senior men by 2 points straight into the garbage. Similarly, this guy is saying it's thrown into the garbage. I don't think it's garbanzo at all. I think it's valid. I think the normal whites theory is undefeated. Normal whites don't like this. Okay. Need a good Selzer poll on top of the survey plus the Kansas R plus 5-1 to fully establish a Trump KKK racker, KKK collapse narrative. Ohio polling, where there's no real incentive to herd, corresponding with the Washington primary more than the rest of the Rust Belt, it has been noted. Like, that's crazy. Ohio being only +3 is crazy. I think that a lot of people are annoyed with the way that Donald Trump and his silly ass hogs operate, okay? And I know there are people in here who voted for Jill Stein. There are people in here who are like objectively not voting. How much do you hate Donald Trump and his stupid ass supporters? If you feel that way, then yeah, you think people who don't give a about Gaza are not feeling that way? Of course they're feeling that way. It's like very little to do with people going out and voting for Kamala Harris's wonderful $50,000 in tax cuts for startups policy, and everything to do with, I don't want these freaks anywhere near a position of power. Okay, that's it. The reason I was turning blue is abortion. Yes, abortion is yet another obviously annoying Trump thing. Okay, people are annoyed, people are mad, people are grossed out by the way that the Trumpian Republican Party operates. This is literally not anything different than the 2022 midterm red wave turning into a baby puddle. It's the same. The only difference between that and what's going on right now, and it's not like this isn't in the bag. I know that like libs are doing victory laps as though like the election is over, you know, they're going to win, whatever. It's still close. I don't think people understand. It's still a toss up in my opinion, but I still favor Kamala Harris on it for how badly Donald Trump has presented himself this entire time. He's done no convincing whatsoever that he would be different somehow, or at least like try to remind people of all the good stuff about how the economy was good when he was president, and instead doing like the worst campaigning possible by sucking the microphone and complaining for 45 minutes about like audio people.
I come in, and here's the problem. I said, oh man, it's too low. I said, it's too low. So I had to go.
Or just being a racist piece of is really annoying, and people don't respond positively to. Harris has to be up 10 to 12 points nationally for this result, and she's simply not. I don't believe she's winning senior men in Iowa, or that over 55s are voting 10 points left of under 35s. Polling is just broken. I don't know how to process this at all. Final New York Times polls, Edinger Momentum was waiting on them too, shows a tie in Michigan and PA. So here's the deal. While the liberals are doing victory laps over the Selzer poll, this is also why I'm saying that it's still a close race. I think that it still favors Kamala Harris, but it's a close race nonetheless. And the only reason why it's a close race, and I know Libdejder is going to get very mad at me for saying this, but it's because Kamala Harris has not done enough messaging and communication beyond harm reduction for the base voters. You can't rely on the base specifically because you're a younger black woman and then assume that they're going to come out and vote for you in droves. That's it. That's it. That's the only reason why it's a close race. Donald Trump is an unimaginably bad candidate. He is not a strong candidate. He's a bad candidate. Okay. JD Vance is also not great either. This is why I said she should have been communicating a different message forward for the black voters, brown voters, young voters in general. Okay. But she didn't do that at all. And these are some of the consequences. If she does not bring the same margins from the Philadelphia base of support, young voters, college educated voters, like voters that are going to college, college students. Like if you don't get turnout from your base, you're kind of cooked. It makes things infinitely closer for no reason. And that's where we're at. And I think that's why these polls are showing this insane tie this close out. Anyway, my point always was, okay, that this race should not be close because of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is, and that much is 100% correct. Donald Trump is a candidate. He doesn't have the juice that he once had. He has no way of like presenting himself as a moderate. Like he's not doing a good enough job with that. And he's trying to pick apart in this incredibly limited base of support that he has. He's trying to pick apart like conspiracy voters. And that is a notoriously unreliable type of voter to try and win over. Okay. They will support you. They'll go out and say they love you, but will they go out and vote? We'll see.
Among all voters, 74% say that the country is on the wrong track going into Election Day. That includes half of Harris supporters and, wait for it, 98% of Trump voters say we are on the wrong track as a country. And 60% of voters say they are still dissatisfied with the candidates. And we finally found an area of bipartisan unity. 61% of Harris supporters and 57% of Trump supporters agree that they are dissatisfied with the candidates.
Damn, dog. I thought people loved Harris's campaigning. I thought that they thought that she was hot. That's crazy. I wonder why people are saying that. I wonder how we got here again, dude. How the did that happen? Now, listen, and I've repeated this time and time again. She is not Hillary Clinton, okay? She doesn't have the metric ton of dissatisfaction, distaste, anger, resentment, hatred, and conspiracy theories that Hillary Clinton had, which is why it was insane for the Democratic Party to be like, this is the candidate, and you're going to shut the up and you're going to vote for her. Okay. She didn't have that. She doesn't have that, which is why, you know, this is not the end all be all. Okay. Not the worst thing. She, however, is not a very good campaigner. She's just not. Doesn't have a lot of riz. She's black. America's racist. Oh, no, for sure. That definitely plays a role. America's also sexist, too. But guess what? What do I always tell incels? Okay. You don't look at a situation that's like built against you and turn around and say, well, you got to play to your advantages and you got to overcome your disadvantages. You know, that's it. I would never be like, oh, this person is a black woman, so she shouldn't run for president, especially if they have dope policies. You know what I mean? It don't matter. Like what? You think she didn't realize that America was racist and that she was a black woman running in a racist country? No, of course she knows that. What the That's precisely the reason why she didn't do the I'm with her style bullshit in the way that Hillary Clinton did. Okay? I don't think the race is going to be close. I don't understand why they don't factor in the Supreme Court and Congress when they talk about the country being on the wrong track. No. Country being on the wrong track is an understandable predicament, understandable position for people to take. I mean, do you think the country's on the right track? I don't. You know what I mean? I don't think the country's on the right track. I get it. I get why people say that, because it's not on the right track. The wheels have fallen off this bitch.
As their likeliest paths to victory at this point.
Yeah, and you heard Selena lay it out a little bit, but if the polls lined up exactly where things are in the Electoral College, if the polls are right, which is a big if, you'd have Donald Trump winning right now. 287 electoral votes, that's more than 270. But the polls, of course, are often off a little bit. So here's the scenario that Selena was talking about, the blue wall. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, if they all go for Kamala Harris, that is 270 electoral votes exactly. That means the presidency for her. For Donald Trump, a couple of different paths, but the likeliest, let's say he carries Nevada and Arizona, where he's been leading in the polling averages, Georgia and North Carolina in the South, historically more Republican. He just needs one more state, and it could be any of the big three. Pennsylvania, the likeliest and the biggest prize. That is the biggest battleground, and it is close to a must-win, as we see for both candidates. There's agreement on that this year as well.
And Rick, you know, we were talking about this behind the scenes this morning. That poll out of Iowa that now shows Harris leapfrogging, leading Trump. I mean, 3%.
Because Selzer is like a very reputable pollster, like people were looking at Iowa being deep red normally. People were looking at this poll and being like, oh, it'll be like +5. If it's like +5 Trump, that is good for Kamala, right? That means that there is a lot of still like resentment for Donald Trump from the base. Maybe some people are not going to go out and vote. And people were looking to extract some kind of data from this that would be helpful for a national snapshot of what the broader electorate looks like. So for this poll to just come out +3 for Kamala Harris, okay, it was nutty. Guy for interpreting the Iowa Selzer poll, Trump +0 to 5, great sign for Harris. Trump 6 to 7, solid result for Harris. Trump 8 to 9, +8 to 9, neutral. Mirrors close Rust Belt polling. Trump +10, not good for Harris. Anything more than 12 and is Jover. This is before the poll came out. That's what the analysis was, because like Iowa is like supposed to be super red. Well, maybe not super red, but like red enough. Iowa allowing huge innovations in map science, huge asterisk, +3 within the margin of error. So it's better to call this a dead even poll than Harris ahead by 3. It doesn't matter. The point is, this is unexpected. This doesn't mean that like Texas is going to turn blue or whatever. Okay. This doesn't mean that at all. What this simply says is that Trump's base in like deep red places, at least like in the middle of the country, is kind of withering away a little bit in comparison to like places like Florida, where he's obviously cooking. Okay. Like, I don't think Kansas is going to turn blue. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm simply saying that things are not looking good in Trump world. And you can tell that things are not looking good in Trump world because they're freaking the out over this. And early voting data showing like a lot of women coming out and voting also does not look good for the Trump world, because the Trump world keeps complaining about how men need to go out and vote. Please go out and vote. If you don't vote, you're gay. Do you think the other big pollsters are just hurting with a conservative Harris lead? I mean, that's the assumption right now. I mean, that's like, and pollsters have said as much. Like they do have a Trump bump that they baked in because they don't want to it up. I'm really glad it's close. They keep saying it's tied. It will get more people to vote. Remember in 2016, they said Hillary had a 90% chance to win, and I think it hurt her chances. A lot of people just decided not to vote. Yeah, there were a lot of issues there. I think the lack of motivation to go out and vote wasn't because Hillary's definitely going to win. I think it was people also despising her and despising Donald Trump too, but definitely despising her. Other key findings in the Iowa poll: independent women back Harris by a 28-point margin. Senior women support her by more than a 2-to-1 margin, 63% to 28%. 97% of them support Harris, while only 89% of Republicans support Trump. Iowa had abortion protected by state courts. Then just days before Dobbs, the Iowa State Supreme Court struck that right down. The GOP passed a 6-week abortion ban. It was upheld by the state Supreme Court this summer. This is the first election since that ruling. And here's what I think is being slept on this fall. There's a state Supreme Court justice in Iowa who's on the ballot in Tuesday. He sided with the majority in his 4-3 upholding of the abortion ban this summer. As a reminder, there are also state justices who upheld the abortion bans this year on the ballot in Florida and Arizona. In Arizona, the GOP has put a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would nullify those elections. Polling is not cheap, but I don't think this comes at the expense of journalism. I think the way that the Times uses polling to drive subscription and grow audience pays for the journalism, not the other way around. I would, however, like to have a better idea of who's going to win. News orgs pour tons of resources into polling at the expense of covering real issues, only to say 2 days before the election we really have no idea if we're right or wrong. A final point that I hope is obvious from the whole of my work, but may not be obvious if you only read individual snippets. I have no idea whether our polls or any polls might be right. Polls be right too good for Harris or too good for Trump. No one does. This cycle I've tried to offer real meat to these scenarios with evidence, not just abstract 30% Harris landslide, 30% Trump landslide, 40% too close. If you personally found some of that evidence more convincing than others, that's great. Me, I have no idea. This is why I'm Mr. Vibes-based analysis post polls, okay? That's it. Because even like the top pollsters, like Nate Cohn is the poll guy for the New York Times. Dave Wasserman, poll guy. Even the top pollsters or the top analysts for polls is turning around and saying like, I really don't know what happening here. To be fair, I've always sprinkled vibes-based analysis on top of the polls. Quick summation of some of the points. There is no reason to believe pollsters fix what went wrong in 2020. There is some evidence. Non-response bias may be better, but also evidence is still there / no reason to assume it's gone. Unknown whether waiting fixes. Many pollsters, not us, have adopted heavy-handed practices that yield more Republican-leaning samples out of potentially, but not necessarily justify fear of systematically failing to reach Trump voters again. This is what I've been saying, okay? A lot of pollsters underestimated bigly Donald Trump in 2016. They still underestimated him in 2020, okay? Donald Trump still outperformed the polls in 2020. The difference is Joe Biden won, just not by the margins that polls were showing him winning by. And that is precisely the reason why pollsters were like, well, you know, Trump is Mr. Turnout in the general especially, so we got to do something about it. And I think that the reason why the 2022 midterm polls were a lot closer wasn't necessarily because pollsters had overcorrected or had figured it out. The reason why 2022 polls were a lot closer within striking distance than like 2020 was because midterms have high propensity voter turnout. Okay, those guys are easier to predict. Those guys are easier to analyze. This is why I think that the midterm election polls were a lot closer to what ended up happening, whereas general election turnout is very different. Okay, that's it. That's the way I see it. And in order to, in my opinion, in order to make sure that they don't again in like, or even be closer to the margins of the end results than even in 2020, they're overcorrecting with like at least a 2-point bump for Trump. And considering how close of a race this is, that obviously matters a lot. I will say, especially with the Selzer polls, like the #1 pollster for the Majority Report, Chapo, and the HasanAbi broadcast is looking pretty fresh in comparison to everyone else. Now we'll see. We'll see. On election day, he's either going to win big and become a legend, or he is going to have egg on his face. Last thing I'm going to talk about the Selzer poll. It's already been said by quite a lot of people at the point, but the main driving force of Harris's surge in the final Selzer polls due to abortion and state's recent abortion bill. On the ground, I see this groundswell of opposition against the bill for months. To start with a basic fact, what do Iowans think of the 6-week ban? They dislike it quite a lot. As we've seen in many culturally conservative states over the last 2 years, a large large majority of Iowans dislike the abortion ban. Again, too insane for the normal whites. You can't have it. You can't do that. Can't be doing that. Even a plurality of men oppose the bill. And an incredibly large majority of women in the state oppose it. Okay? In the breakdowns, you can shed some light on a lot of the more dramatic shifts in the Selzer poll. 71% of suburban adults, 88% of suburban women. These are voters that are more likely to shift away from Trump this year when a lot of them voted for him in 2020. Why do you think men support the bill? More men support the bill? What do you think? What do you think? It's because they're dudes. They're never going to have to get an abortion. The entire premise of the abortion ban is basically about controlling women's bodies. And, you know, not to get all Radley up in this bitch, but yeah, men kind of with that. They like it. Or at the very least, they're selfish and they don't think about it. That's it. Yeah. For them, they either A, don't give a because it's like, it don't bother me. I don't give yeah, it seems like life is life. We should preserve it or whatever the or they just straight up like it. Even pro-life advocates believe the bill is uniquely harsh. It single-handedly helped crash Kim Reynolds' approval rating. There are things Selzer and many other people around here have pointed in regards to the results of the final poll. And while it's easy to sift through the crosstabs and call bull, there are very good reasons to believe that the overall shifts are happening. To end, I'd like to note one little part of the Selzer poll I found interesting. We didn't see Trump lose support. We saw Harris gain support. She surged with new voters and independents. In my opinion, that grants the poll different credibility than if Trump had lost a lot of ground. If you want more decent Iowa politics coverage, I might try to focus on it.